Hello.
Hello. We have someone new to introduce to you.
Yep. So our first son has finally arrived. He is called Julian.
He's right here.
He has finally arrived and joined our family. So
Yeah, he's only 2 weeks old as of this video. So 14 days.
yeah.
And we are obsessed and in love with this kid.
We are. We truly are. And we thought we would, well, we're on mat leave and paternity leave right now. And honestly, there's not that much to do because this kid is just sleeping constantly.
Eating.
So we thought we would hop on here and talk about our birth story. One, because I thought it'd be fun to just share it, but two, because I really want to document it while it's still fresh in my mind. And it's something that I really want to look back on one day because it was such an incredible day. It was like one of the best days of our lives. And so we really want to go into detail today about it. So if you're like squirmy and you don't like medical details, then this is not the video for you. I'm going to recall everything I can remember on the day of and also what Jesse can remember on the day of and just talk about it in full detail. So if you don't like to hear about birth stories, please move on to the next video.
There are plenty of other videos for you to watch.
Exactly. All right, let's get into it. All right, so
Let's go back in time.
back
2 weeks
in
ago.
time.
Week 39.
Yes, 39 and 1 day.
Because it was week 39, that was technically my last in-office work week. So I went to the office on this day.
By the way, full term, like full pregnancy is usually 40 weeks, but by week 39 you can have a baby and it's like full term, like it's basically just like what it's gonna be like at 40 weeks. So
I was in the office. So things started when we were in different physical locations. Why don't you start off? To set the context, I was at the office and you were at home.
Yeah, I was at home. At 39 weeks, the day before, I was in a miserable mode. Like, I could not be another day pregnant. I was so upset. I had pains everywhere. Everything was just hurting in my body, and it was like screaming for like help. I can't remember, but I actually booked a chiropractor appointment the day that I went into labor because something was hurting so badly. I honestly can't even recall. Do you remember?
I don't remember what was hurting, but maybe your sides or your hips.
Yeah, maybe. So I had really bad like hip flexor pain in my third trimester. I think it's due to the round ligament, and it was like stabbing pain, and because of that I couldn't really walk very much anymore. I was immobile, and yeah, in general it was just a really bad time. And so that morning that I went into labor, I was also so upset. Like, I remember calling my friend, we were FaceTiming, and I was just crying, telling her how much in pain I was, how much like I don't want to be pregnant anymore. I was just like ready to give birth any moment now. And then I also made plans with another friend that night to drive me to my chiropractor appointment and also have dinner together. Both which did not happen because shortly after my FaceTime with my friend, I went into labor.
Well, your water broke.
Well, my water broke, yeah. So my water broke. I was just like hanging out in the living room, literally on the floor, like stretching, trying to like find a comfortable position. And I felt like a little pop and some water came out. And I was like, is this pee? Like, I don't think it is because I'm not incontinent. Like, is that how I wasn't peeing myself during my third trimester, so it was like weird if I like just started peeing myself suddenly. So I went to the bathroom, and as I sat in the toilet, like more water came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is it. Like, I think this is the water breaking, as people would say or see in the movies. And so I was like, okay, I need to call Jesse because he's at work right now. So I picked up the phone and called him, and
Yeah, so at that moment, I was in a meeting with my team, and I think I remember making a joke that I hope I will work the rest of the week, thinking that maybe the kid will come the following week, and everyone was making a joke that you don't get to decide when the baby comes. And I kid you not, literally 30 seconds afterwards, when that conversation happened in the meeting, she called me, and I picked up the phone, left the meeting room, and then in the calmest voice, Cheryl was like, hey, I think my water broke. She also said, I think it's time for you to come home now. And like the calmest voice possible.
I was super calm in that moment because, one, I was really excited, but I was trying to not be too excited because people say like even after your water breaks, you can still be like 2 days before you can actually like see your baby, or like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
I don't know, like you're not in labor right away. So I was like excited, but also didn't want to be like too, like, because I didn't know what was gonna happen and when we were gonna meet him.
So then I'm like, okay, yeah, time to leave the office. So then when I hang up and I go back to the meeting room, and I'm like, well guys, well team, I'll see you in 3 months, because I think baby is coming out soon. So then I get on my bike, and I remember this bike ride because in my head on my short 12-minute bike ride home, thinking this is the final bike ride without a kid physically in the world.
Mm-hmm.
This is the final bike ride as a non-father.
Yeah.
So that was a cool, surreal moment for that 12-minute biking home. And I had my AirPods on too while biking, and I just remember getting messages played out from Cheryl, like, remember to buy toilet paper. Though she was giving me like a grocery list after her water broke.
Yeah.
So then I can sense that it wasn't like super urgent right now.
No, I wasn't having contractions yet, so like the only thing that was happening was like I was excited to be in, like, my water broke. And I wanted to be prepared because we needed toilet paper and we needed toilet cleaner, and I was like, if I'm gonna give birth on this toilet, like it needs to be like super clean. So I'm like, just texted him with a grocery list. About half an hour later, I would say, I started to feel some contractions, and it was pretty mild in the beginning. I would say like for the first hour, it was like I can talk through it, like. Jesse was filming me and vlogging. I don't know if we're gonna share any of those clips. They're a bit intimate.
I think those just video clips for us to remember those times.
Yeah, so we'll share what we can, if any, because I was like quite naked throughout the whole day. It was a really hot day. And so we'll share what we can, maybe some photos we can share. But basically I was just laboring at home for like the first 4 hours, I would say, and every hour I would say it started like escalating a little bit more, but I actually like it escalated quite quickly, like more quickly than I expected, because a lot of people say in early labor, like you can like dance around, bake some cookies, like I don't know, like try to just sleep through it, ignore the contractions, and like there was no way I could ignore the contractions from the beginning. Like it was there and I was like fully in it. Like I still needed to concentrate. I can talk through it, but I still needed to breathe through it and concentrate. And so
there are apps out there, like a lot of free apps out there to record your contractions, so then you can figure out whether things are expediting.
Yeah, and within like an hour, I was already like 3.5 to 4 minutes apart in contractions, which is actually the recommended time when you should call and possibly go to the hospital. But apparently that's also not like a very accurate indicator. So like maybe 2 hours later, we called the midwife and she came over and did a cervical check for me, and I was only about like 2 centimeters dilated at that point, even though I was 3.5 and 4 minutes apart in contractions. So at that moment she was like, you know what, I don't think you're ready, like if you want to go to the hospital, which is what I've chosen to do, like you're not really ready to go yet. And so yeah, we just continued to labor at home for like the next few hours, and I would say like 3 hours in, it like escalated.
It started to hurt.
Yeah, it started to hurt, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I got a little bit anxious because it was like ramping up, and so I was like, okay, it's time to call the doula, because we have a doula. She's incredible, and usually what they say is like you can invite your doula to join you once you feel like you need them, and they stay by you throughout the whole labor experience.
Yeah. So then she arrived.
Yeah.
And then this is probably hour 4 now by the time she arrived, and I think that's where it continued to increase in terms of contractions, but also pain.
Yeah.
So then she was a godsend, because she then, from that moment on when she arrived,
Yeah.
she was basically massaging you.
Yeah.
Every contraction.
Every contraction.
And then spoiler, the whole labor was about 17 hours in total.
Yeah. And by the way, if you've never given birth before, contractions feel like period cramps for me. So basically what happened was, when you have a period cramp, usually it's like, you know, in your belly, on your sides, on your hip. This one felt like period cramps, but at the lower abdomen, and also like kind of in my pelvic area, like lower belly area. And it was just like period cramps times 10. So like imagine your worst period cramp, the ones that like send you to the floor. And that's like kind of what the contractions felt like. So it wasn't like an unfamiliar feeling. I thought it was gonna be like completely something different, but honestly it was like a familiar feeling, just it happening for 17 hours is what it was, and then escalating, obviously getting worse and worse. Okay, anyway, so the doula came, and then about an hour after that, the midwife came back and did a cervical check again, and I was about like 2 to 3 or
I think it was 3 to 4.
3 to 4 centimeters dilated, and that's when she was like, okay, you can continue laboring at home, or at this point you can decide to go to the hospital. And I decided to go to the hospital because I honestly could not imagine going through that pain in the car for that long, and I was worried that if I waited for another CM or 2, like it would be too late and I would have to like give birth at home, which is very common in the Netherlands. It's actually the primary way to give birth in the Netherlands is home births. So everyone else was prepared to do a home birth if we needed to. I was not going to have a home birth. So I wanted to get into the car and just get it over with so that I can relax at the hospital.
So then,
not relax,
but then in the Netherlands, what happens at that moment is then the midwife will call your top 3 to 5 hospitals that you put on the list, which went down the list, and there were a few hospitals that were automatically coming back to us and say, hey, we're full, sorry. But luckily, the 3rd or 4th hospital on the list has space, and it wasn't in Amsterdam. It was a 10-12 minute drive from Amsterdam, so very close. We were very happy.
Yeah.
So then we got the spot.
Yeah.
So then we got into the car, we drove in, and immediately once we parked at the hospital, we got Cheryl onto a wheelchair, and rolled her into the private room that we had.
Yeah.
And the private room was quite nice.
Before we get there, I just want to talk about the car experience really quickly, because I think the car experience was one of the things that I was most anxious about on birthday, because I have anxiety with car rides, and I know a lot of people feel the same way, especially if you're in pain, in labor, and then you have to get into a car. to an unexpected location, because again, you don't know which hospital you're going to give birth at on the day. There's just so many question marks and gray area in that period of time that like that caused a lot of my anxiety pre-labor. And so I just wanted to like say that it was actually totally fine. Like, I'm someone who gets motion sick, and I know a lot of people also get motion sick, or they get motion sick when they're not feeling well. When I was in labor, I did not feel anything else other than contraction pains, even though I was in the car and Jesse was kind of like driving really quickly. So like on a normal day, I might have been motion sick, but because the contractions were so crazy, or like so painful, that it honestly was not even a thing in my mind. Like I was like, I'd rather feel motion sick at this point than to feel the contractions, but I didn't feel it at all. And also it was because your contractions are like, you know, spaced apart. I only really went through like 3 to 4 contractions throughout that car ride. So it was very manageable because it was only like a 15-minute drive. So all in all, don't worry about your car ride. Bring a puke bag just in case you do need it. But honestly, in that moment, you're just concentrating on your contractions, and you probably won't be worried about being motion sick or car sick or even what's going on around you.
Yeah, one more thing before we get back to when we entered the hospital is that happened on week 39, as we said. We had our hospital bags packed maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks prior to that, so about week 37.
Yeah.
We highly recommend you doing that if you are expecting to give birth. Because on day out when she started contracting, all we had to do was just grab like maybe an extra pair of clothing and our electronic chargers, and everything else was already packed. So we didn't even have to think about packing. We just grabbed the bag.
We had a packing list too, just in case there were some last minute things. So yeah, definitely have a checklist ready for
that
those.
That could be an extra layer of stress.
Yeah.
Like, what do I pack? Did I forget something?
Yeah, exactly.
So we just have to pack 1 to 3 extra things on top of the bags that you already packed, then it's just much more manageable.
Yeah.
All right, back to the hospital. We just arrived, and we wheeled you directly into our private hospital room, which was quite big and nice. It's modern facilities. Yeah. There was a bed. There's a private toilet and shower, and there was also even a sofa couch for the father.
Yeah, it was really, really great room. I was impressed. The first thing that we requested when we got there was the birth pool. Now, I just wanted to talk about my birth plan really quickly. My birth plan was to have an unmedicated birth, and that was not priority, but it was my preference to start with. But I always had in mind that I wanted to be in a hospital that had the option to have an epidural in case I needed it and wanted to request for one. So that's why we ended up at the hospital, and thankfully a lot of the hospitals in the Netherlands have birth pools where you can rent it. And I think our birth pool was like €100, and you just like pay by cash on the spot, and like they'll give it to you and deliver it to your room. So that's a really great option for people in the Netherlands. I find, like, I don't know if birth pools are very accessible in hospitals in other countries. Usually it's more of like a home birth kind of thing. And so yeah, it was a really great option for us to kind of be able to do unmedicated and medicated in one place. And so yeah, about an hour later, the birth pool was ready. And
about 7 p.m.
Yeah. Before that, I was laboring on the birth ball, which was also provided by the hospital. And at that point, I think I was like, the pain level was probably at about a 6, and I was about 4 centimeters dilated at that point. And I was really excited to hop into the pool because at that point I was like ready for some pain killing of some sort. I wouldn't say going in the pool was any type of painkiller, but for the first hour I would say it was like a little bit more relaxing because of the warm water, except I was getting really hot. Like the water needs to be warm, and it was warm in the room. So I was kind of heated a little bit. So it was kind of like nice for the back, but also overheated. So I don't know if I loved it that much. But the birth pool was like taking up the whole space in the shower room. And so because of that, my birth team, like Jesse, my doula, my midwife, didn't really have that much space to be close to me. Like everyone was in front of me in like this cramped little spot that was in front of me in the shower room. But because of that, like nobody could get into the pool, nobody can get behind me. And so I actually felt quite alone when I was in the bath in the pool, and I didn't really love that feeling. Like I felt way more supported when I was outside of the pool, because someone can be in front of me, someone can be behind me, someone can massage me, and like someone can be beside me. But yeah, that was one thing that I didn't really love about the pool experience. And other than that, like the pool was a great option, but it stalled my labor. So at that point, I was at 5 centimeters dilated for like the whole time in the pool.
There was no progress made.
Yeah, there was no progress made in the pool, and I think that happens quite commonly with pools, is that your body gets a little bit more relaxed, and because of that, like it doesn't progress labor. And so unfortunately, that whole 4 hours I had no progress, and I was stuck at 5 centimeters dilated. And that was what was really discouraging for me at that point, because I felt a little bit like I was doomed a little bit, like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take forever. I don't think pool was the best option for me. And so we all decided that I needed to get out of the pool to progress labor.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I came out of the pool. I was really anxious to do that, because I was like, oh my gosh, if it feels like this in the pool, it must feel worse not in the pool, because I thought it was gonna be worse. Luckily, I actually felt a little bit better outside of the pool. One, because I felt like maybe there was going to be more progression, but two, because my doula was able to give me massages again, and honestly, that was way more helpful than anything else as a pain relief. Other things I use as pain relief is the birth combs. So I had 2 combs in my hands at all times, which really helped me concentrate on the pain receptors on my hand instead of everywhere else. And so, not that it was a pain relief per se, but it took my concentration away from the pain in my stomach. And then I also had the TENS machine going on pretty much at all times except for when I was in the pool, and that also helped a bit, again, with just bringing the pain receptors to somewhere else rather than in the front of my belly. But I think the biggest pain relief was my doula massaging my back. Like, she would put pressure on my back, like every contraction I'd be like, pressure, and my doula would basically come in and put pressure on my lower back, and that was the biggest pain relief for me. Honestly, it was godsend, and I'm so grateful for her, because for the full 17 hours, like, she did that for me, like every contraction. So we were very, very lucky to have her. And yeah, so
I remember it took a bit of time once
Yep.
you got out of the pool for the dilation to continue, right?
Yeah.
I think it took a bit longer for that 5 centimeter to increase up to 5.5.
I actually don't think it did. It didn't.
No, I think it did go up a little bit, but then got out of the pool by 11. And then by like 1 a.m., you maybe had half a centimeter more dilated
Yeah.
from 5, so
Oh,
you're
right,
at 5 and a
yeah.
half. So at that moment, then we all were asking, like I remember asking you, like, do you want to get some assistance, like as in
Yeah.
the epidural?
So we want more pain relief options.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous to ask for an epidural because, you know, all the side effects of epidurals or cons of having an epidural. And I wasn't opposed to it. I always had in mind that I would ask for one if I really felt like I needed it. And at that point, I did feel like I was ready for it. At first, I asked if they had gas and air, but they didn't have gas and air at the hospital for some reason. And so I was like, okay, epidural is really the only other option for stronger pain relief. And so at that point, I was like, okay, let's go for it. They also recommended it because labor was already at 14 hours at this point, and I was getting too tired, and I might not be able to push if I don't get some rest. And so
I think around like 3 a.m. that's where they brought in the epidural specialist to
anesthesiologist,
to set you up because you have to touch things on your back.
So it took about an hour to get everything set up. Like they had to put an IV in me, which is why I have all these bruises all around my arm right now, because they literally pricked me like 4 to 5 times. It's the worst. That was probably, I mean, it's not worse than contractions, but it's still painful to this day. Like this bruise, look how bad it is. It's still like really bad. And then, we had to get an IV in. I had to get a catheter in. I had to get, and then they just basically did the local anesthetics in the back, and then they applied the epidural. A lot of people freak out about the epidural and the needle. Honestly, never saw the needle, so I don't even know how big it is. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Was it thick?
It's not much thicker than what I've seen you take before, right?
Okay, like a normal.
Yeah.
Okay. People always freak out about the epidural. Honestly, didn't feel it. The worst part about the epidural was just staying still, which is hard because it feels weird in your back, and because you have contractions. I mean, we stopped when the contractions hit, but like you're still in labor, so like, you know, you're kind of like uncomfortable. And so the worst part was really just staying still, which was really important. But other than that, I did like, it was just a prick, like it wasn't bad at all. And then so the IV was definitely more painful than the epidural itself. I was like, it's done already? And they're like, yeah, you're done.
Yeah, and by the time it was all done, it was about 4:30 in the morning at night. And you started to feel it, right? You started to not feel the contractions as much.
Yeah, so almost right away, like 15 minutes after, I didn't feel the contractions. Like pretty much the next contraction, it was already like less painful, and then the one after that, it was like done. Like I didn't feel anything at all. I had no pain. Like people say you feel the contraction still, and I had a walking epidural, which is not common in the Netherlands. I think maybe only this hospital, because it's newer, offers a walking epidural. And what a walking epidural is you're still able to technically move around. Like if you really wanted to, you can stand, even though they never recommended it. I was on the bed the whole time, but I was able to get in all fours, which was not ideal either. So I was mostly on my back. But the walking epidural is what I got. And then
so then it was like 4:30, and I think you had moved up to between 7 to 8 centimeter dilation.
Yeah.
And the recommendation of the doctor was both of us should go take a nap before we wake up for the final push.
Yeah.
So then about 5 a.m., both of us tried to nap.
Yeah.
I might have gone 30 to 45 minute nap, and you didn't get any sleep at all.
No, I didn't fall asleep at all because I was shaking from the adrenaline. And that's common to have the shakes. And I didn't end up actually sleeping, but I did rest like for those 2 hours. But it was great because at that point I didn't feel the pain anymore. The contractions itself felt a little bit like my Braxton Hicks when I had them, which is you can feel like a little bit of like this in the stomach, and then every time I had a contraction, it kind of took my breath away. So I got a bit breathless every time, and that was pretty much like all I felt, which was great. So I got to rest, And because the pain went away, I was able to like, you know, interact with people again and put a smile on my face again. We even vlogged a little bit. So I was like, oh my gosh, like drugs are great. Like, why didn't I do this earlier? Honestly, it was like easy peasy once I got the epidural, in terms of the pain level. And then
So then around 6 to 6:15, we were woken
Yeah.
up by the doctors and nurses to start preparing for the final push.
The last few
Because
centimeters.
we were around
and the
8.5 to 9 centimeters at that
Yeah.
moment. And then from 6:45 a.m., you started the final pushing.
Yeah. And so pushing was so hard, you guys. Like when you have an epidural, you don't really feel a contraction so much. So you're purple pushing. So what purple pushing is you are holding your breath and just pushing as hard as you can. They always say like push like you're taking the biggest shit of your life. And that's what I was trying to do. And honestly, it was so hard because I was so tired by then. I had no sleep for the last like 20 something hours. And then I was so dizzy and nauseous. I don't know why. It only started, I think because I was just so hungry and exhausted and I had no sleep, that I was dizzy and nauseous for the whole pushing time, which was about an hour. And I was so nauseous I actually like puked like a couple times, which is, sorry, kind of gross, but that's the reality of what happened. I did feel better after I puked it out, but that was pretty much like right before my last push. So yeah. So anyways, we started pushing and that was like a whole hour. They gave me a mirror that was like ginormous. It was like this big. And I got to watch myself push, which was insane because you're literally like watching the head come out. Jesse was also like right beside me, like watching the whole thing. Like everyone was just like so encouraging at this point. It was like I felt like a freaking warrior, and like people around me were just like, "You can do it!" Like it was just like I felt like I was fighting a war at this
I think
point.
we skipped one detail in the middle of the night. That the moment you decided that you wanted the epidural, there was a transfer of responsibility from the midwife to the hospital doctor. So then in that moment, the midwife said, "Goodbye, good luck," but then the responsibility is on the doctors. So then, as you were doing this push, it was
a gynecologist.
It was, the doctor, and then a nurse, and then me and the doula.
So there was a lot of people in the room.
More people in the room.
More people, and a trainee or something.
Doctor in training.
Doctor in training was there, which was kind of weird, but she was nice, so it was fine. But yeah, I was like, I was fighting a war at that time. I was just really zoned in, but because I was so dizzy and nauseous, I don't think my pushing was very effective. And so the pushing time actually took too long, is what they say, and they were starting to get worried that baby was feeling a bit distressed from pushing for so long. So they actually recommended to do like a little pH swab, which meant that you had to like go into my vagina and basically like scratch his little head a little bit, which was not going to hurt him or me. But basically they like did a little scratch in his head inside the womb and tested his pH levels, which told us whether he was in distress or not. And thankfully he was not, but if he was, we might have had to do an emergency C-section. And they told me all the risks and everything, and I was so worried at that point because I definitely, of all things, did not want a C-section. That was like the one thing that I really was against because of recovery. Thankfully, he was non-distressed, so we can continue with the vaginal birth. But it still took too long. After like 30 minutes, it was still going on, and so
his heartbeat was dropping.
Yeah, his
during
heartbeat.
the contraction.
Yeah, and so they recommended to do an episiotomy. which for those who don't know what that is, it's basically the cut. And so like instead of tearing naturally, which I did also tear naturally, they would cut my vagina a little bit more, so that baby can come out basically immediately after
the next contraction.
That's what they told me. They're like, once we cut it, like if you want to do it, then baby's gonna come out in the next contraction. I was like, in my head, I was like, that's amazing. Like, I'm ready for this baby to come out. I've been pushing for an hour. So I was like, okay, let's do it. I was like, I'm ready for the baby to be here. And so in my head, I was like, you know what? Like, given how hard I'm pushing right now, I'm probably naturally tearing anyways. You might as well have a clean cut as opposed to a tear. Because at that point, like, it wasn't an unmedicated birth already. So I'm like, you might as well just add to it at that point. So we got the cut, and literally the next push, I was watching it in the mirror. Baby literally just like slid out.
His hair showed up first, right?
Yeah.
So you can see the hair, and then the doctor told me to move over because I wanted to catch him when he comes out.
Yeah.
So literally the next contraction concluded, and he just popped out.
It literally slid out. It was crazy. And I watched the whole thing. Jesse, then you caught him
Me and
with
the doctor.
the doctor.
Me and the doctor caught him. There was a split second of silence, and then like on a dime like this, he started crying.
And it was like the most surreal moment of our lives, you guys. Like, just thinking back at it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is happening right now. It can make me cry just thinking about it, that moment. And immediately he was brought to my chest. We had skin to skin, and like I had a half lotus birth, so like basically we did all the delayed cord clamping with the placenta, and we made sure like he got all of his blood, and like I was able to preserve the placenta too. I got it encapsulated actually, and so it was just like the most magical, beautiful moment ever. And he was so cute coming out of the womb, and I know every mom and dad probably says that, but
we're definitely very biased. But
he was like,
we also think he was objectively cute.
Yeah, like he was kind of purple coming out of the womb, but like seconds later he changed color to like, you know, a red kind of shade on his face, like a normal skin color.
He didn't look too alien.
No, he didn't look too alien. Like, he had really great features and stuff. And so yeah, it was such a beautiful moment.
It was a nice moment, the three of us hugging with him on your chest.
We were crying.
He was crying, of course.
He was crying. We're all crying.
Yeah.
Just like in awe of the situation.
Couldn't believe that he was finally here.
Yeah. And yeah, that was basically our birth story.
Yeah.
And now we have Julian in our lives, and we cannot be prouder.
And we're enjoying every moment during this time.
Yeah.
Both of us are off work, not working, for at least 3 months.
Yeah.
We're just enjoying just the three of us every day, having no set schedule, no social plans, and just waking up and just enjoying Julian every day.
Yeah, basically.
But essentially being his slave. All he does is eat, sleep, and poop.
Yeah.
And then we need to cater him. And we might need to cater him again for free food right now.
He's been a really good, like, baby boy so far. Like, yeah, he's really healthy, and we had a little bit of medical scare right after his birth, but you know, infants tend to give you heart attacks.
Get a little bit of fever, so we, just to be safe, we went to the hospital.
Yeah.
They're very thorough here, so we stayed 2 nights, and everything was good. There was no problems, but yeah, just want to be better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And then that's actually how they want parents to operate in this country, is if there's any concerns, go to the hospital, or call the midwife, or go to the hospital, and then they'll make sure that they check the kid out for any potential problems.
Yeah. All right, so that's really our birth story, and there's so much more around the birth. Like afterwards, we had a postpartum nurse, the Crumbs org, which is a special thing that we get in the Netherlands, which we can talk about in another video if you're interested.
We talk about how we have done the sleeping with the kid. Are we getting any sleep? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also like the system here in the Netherlands is just so different. Like you get like, you know, the pediatrician is very different here, and so if you have any questions about, you know, pre-birth or after birth, postpartum, please let us know in the comments, and we'll film another video about it. We wanted this video to be more focused on Julian's birthday, and so yeah, we hope you enjoyed hearing about birth story, and I'm so glad we filmed this because now we can look back at it.
Not forget about that memorable day, one of the best days of our life.
Yeah. All right, so we hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.